Sáenz González. She's neonatologist at La Fe University Hospital in Valencia, doctor, university professor, and member of the Perinatology Research Group and the Spanish Neonatal Society Humanization Commission. And today she's going to focus on kangaroo care during SARS CoV-2 pandemic in Spain. We are very pleased to welcome Dr. Pilar Sáenz González.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning at all. I'm going to talk about the kangaroo care during the pandemic in Spain. And thanks to the organization for inviting me, and thank you all of us for coming here to Spain at this amazing congress. The coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic started in Wuhan, China in December 2019. The novel coronavirus spread rapidly through every country in the world, and Italy and quickly Spain were the first European country reached. Due to the lack of the solid evidence of transmission and the fear the parents' potential transmission to the children and the healthcare professional, almost all of us changed quickly our open door policy and consequently the practice of kangaroo care. There were successive changes in official recommendation. On March 6, 2020, the Spanish Society of Neonatology published its first document of recommendation for the management of newborn in relation of SARS CoV-2 infection. There were limitations on visit to the newborn except for the healthy mother and father. The separate admission of the infection contact in a single room with isolation measure and mother-child separation is also specified. And since vertical transmission through birth milk could not be ruled out, the Spanish Society of Neonatology advised against breastfeeding until both mother and her milk were negative for COVID-19. But as the information varies rapidly, the second revision, only 44 hours after, on March 8, no longer contraindicate breastfeeding if strict hygiene and mask measures were followed. On March 14, the Spanish government published the royal decree declaring the state of alarm and for the management of the health crisis. All the movements were restricted to justified movement and essential workers. This fact made it impossible for family and friends to visit neonatal units. On March 15, 2020, the Society Spanish of Neonatology updated its version 4.0, specifying that skin-to-skin contact between the healthy newborn and the positive COVID mother is allowed if strict mother and child isolation measures are guaranteed. Different protocols were adopted in each hospital, adapting official recommendations to their unit, for instance, to guarantee infant and health personnel safety. The University Hospital of Padua in Italy implemented the screening in all neonates, parents, and healthcare professionals in neonatal units, which achieved good outcomes even at times when the incident was peaking. In our unit in Valencia, the first version of the protocol dates on the 12th of March 2020. Since we have had 10 versions of the protocol. The global health crisis and the constant changes in protocol and guidelines had constituted a substantial professional and emotional challenge. On March 31, 2020, the first newborn infected by COVID-19 in Spain was published online. She was a term newborn by cesarean section for a severe preeclampsia of the mother. On the third day of life, her mother required intubation and mechanical ventilation for infectious disease. Mother and father tested positive for COVID-19. The girl was isolated on the 6th day of life, being negative until the 8th day of life. His clinical was very mild and shortened in time. It was concluded in an original transmission. Reports of the severity of the disease in neonate varied. Neonates have demonstrated low rate of infection, primarily asymptomatic or moderate disease presentation. However, severe disease and a small number of neonatal deaths have been documented. Most common symptoms of neonatal COVID infection are respiratory and include fever, cold, dyspnea, hypoxia, desaturation, lethargy, respiratory distress, respiratory failure, tachycardia, and pneumonia. In 2020, Dear et al. Reviewed 86 publications. Overall, 58 neonates were reported with COVID-19 infection. Of these, 22 require intensive care admission, and 10 were ventilated, invasive and non-invasive ventilated. Non-mortality was reported. As we see in this slide, the neonatal COVID-19 transmission is mostly horizontal, as although a few cases of congenital infection have also been reported. In Spain, we have a national prospective epidemiological study that includes cases of neonatal infection due to SARS CoV-2 from a national register supported by the Neonatal Spanish Society. The results from the 3 April 2020 to the 18 May 2020 were published in Frontier of Pediatrics. Mothers in both groups and healthcare workers in nosocomial cases were the main sources of infection. These are the result of the 3 years of coronavirus pandemic in Spain from this national register pending of publication. We have had a total of 200 cases registered, 153 community-acquired and 13 nosocomial cases. There were also 17 vertical cases, but only 3 were true positive cases. Let's analyze the nosocomial cases, which are the ones that concern us when we are recommending kangaroo care practice in the NICU. Most of the nosocomial cases occurred at the beginning of the pandemic, when the population was not vaccinated and there was not facility for screening. 40% of the nosocomial cases were asymptomatic. 8 cases were admitted to the neonatal intermediate care, and 10 newborns need intensive care. Clinical manifestations were generally mild in nosocomial group. Most severe cases occur in preterm infant and in neonate with concomitant pathologies. Most of the cases did not require respiratory support, and non-mortality was reported. At this stage, what about kangaroo care during the SARS CoV-2 pandemic in Spain? As we know, the kangaroo care has multiple benefits for both the immature newborn and the parents. However, the pandemic restriction compromised the kangaroo practice, without being very clear about the consequences and repercussions that this could have in the long term for this newborn. Seeing the consequences of the pandemic on the kangaroo care, we designed a study to assess the impact of SARS-CoV-2 pandemic on kangaroo care in neonatal units in Spain, and to identify possible opportunity for improvement on the context of the pandemic. We wanted to determine the impact of SARS-CoV-2 pandemic on the practice of kangaroo care in Spain, and to know the opinion and perception of professionals to establish area for improvement. We conduct a cross-sectional observational descriptive study. We developed an ad hoc questionnaire that was disseminated through social network to professional staffing for neonatal units and through social network by Cuidando Neonatos blog. The periods to respond was the 4 to the 19 January 2021. We got a total of 263 responses to the survey, with representation of every autonomous community in Spain, the result of which are summarized in Table 1. Let's analyze them in more detail. 55% of the response were nurses and 33 neonatologists. 66% of the unit had a high level of assistance, and the mean years of experience in neonatal care was 5.7 years. During pandemic, the proportion of units that offer unrestricted 24-hour access to parents decreased from a frequency of 95% before the pandemic, based on data published by Maria López Maeso, to 85% in our survey. There were also severe and prolonged restrictions for relatives and siblings. Only 19 of the NICU in Spain did not have any restriction for parental access during pandemic. 65.8% let only one parent without time restriction, and 11% of the unit let only one parent with time restriction. A study like ours was published in Journal of Perinatology in 2020. in the USA. They got 277 response to a national survey about the impact of restriction on parents present in NICU related to coronavirus disease. Overall, 130 had restriction to NICU parent present during the pandemic. Of these, most allow only a single parent at the bedside, and 33 NICUs require families to choose a single parent for the entire hospital stage. Prohibition of parent present in a NICU was rare, but it occurred at 6 sites, 3%. This slide of the same study shows the general decline in parent involvement in round in USA pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. Authors found a significant decrease in parent present in NICU from 85% to 53%, and a decrease in parental participation in infant care from 71% to 32%. We found also a decrease in the unrestricted practice of kangaroo care during the pandemic from a frequency of 87% before the pandemic, based again on data published by Maria López-Mares on 2020, to 46% in our study. So, as we see in the slide, in March 2020, as the pandemic emerged, the rapid spread of the virus led to the implementation of measures that restrict parental visits to the neonatal units, with an impact on their active participation in care, including kangaroo care. Only 46% of the NICU in Spain did not have limitation for kangaroo care during pandemic, and 26% let only one of the parents to do it. 70% of the response to our survey answered that the frequency of kangaroo care decreased during COVID pandemic. Half of the response answered that the measure and restrictions related to the pandemic have low impact on breastfeeding. This is not what Maite tell us, and what subsequently has been reported in the literature. This article from the Spanish multicenter study and many others have shown significant impact on breastfeeding rate during the pandemic. In January 2021, regarding the opinion of the health professional in Spain, 78.3% affirm that the pandemic could increase parent stress, fear of infecting their children during COVID kangaroo care. And 40.7% consider that the use of the mask can be a barrier to hinder the attachment relationship between the family and the newborn. And 20% in January 2021 still report that the initial limitations should be maintained. Initially, due to the lack of evidence and because of the previous epidemics such as Spanish flu or HIV, during the COVID-19 pandemic we have only in mind the fear of contagion among both the newborn and the health personnel. However, after a few months, the high rate of vaccination were achieved both in health professionals and in parents, and evidence was accumulating on the lightness of positive cases in neonatology. While, on the contrary, the great benefits of kangaroo care practice were being damaged. So this is the question. Have we asked ourselves about the consequences of limiting family-centered care and kangaroo care during the coronavirus pandemic? In this article, published online on Pediatrics in May 2020, this restrictive strategy was originally intended to reduce the spread of the virus and protect newborn and professionals, are accused as responsible of other risks for newborn and their family. Limiting the family care and the kangaroo care could have affected the establishment of not only the establishment of emotional bonding, but also the rate of breastfeeding and the neurodevelopment of this preterm newborn. COVID-19 has supposed a back in the past in neonatal policies. The obligation to comply with the guidelines of the health authority in NICUs has generated harm in all the newborn admitted, regardless whether or not they were related to COVID-19. But newborn require specific and differentiated care given their neonatal particularity and vulnerability. Conclusion: in Spain, the coronavirus pandemic has caused significant negative impact on kangaroo care practice due to the limitation currently imposed. The easing of the measure has perhaps been too slow if we consider the current evidence regarding COVID infection in neonates. If there is uncertainty regarding potential transmission, a screening program could be complemented and even prioritizing the vaccination of family with infant in neonatal units. Thanks to all the professionals from Spanish neonatal units who have collaborated in completing the survey and who, despite the pandemic, have continued to promote and carry out the kangaroo care. Thank you.